One of the most important topics for school leaders is school enrollment. How do we make sure that we're able to get students in the door and in our classrooms? On today's episode, I was so excited to talk to Brandon Schneider, an absolute expert on SEO, marketing, and how to position yourself as a school. What I love about this episode is we invite you to pause and reflect several times. There's tons of activities to do with your staff, questions to be asking yourself, and next steps to take forward. I joke at the end that we leave almost like a breadcrumb of trail of ideas and thoughts. So I know this is an episode you're not only going to want to listen to once, but to keep coming back to again and again as you go about your marketing journey. Without any further ado, let's jump into this amazing conversation with Brandon Schneider. All right, let's do it. Brandon, I am so excited to have you here. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. I'm excited to be here.
So I'd love for you just to kind of set the stage for our audience. Who are you? What's your history with education? And what's the work that you're really passionate about now?
Yeah. Well, I worked in schools for 28 years. So what kind of schools? So private independent schools. One was a boarding school, actually in my alma mater, and then a day school for a long time. And then towards the end of my time in schools, I started what I call my side hustle that was primarily designed to help marketing and communications offices at schools or professionals at schools. And about 2 years ago, I made the jump to do this full time. Awesome. So consulting and helping private schools with marketing communications as it leads to enrollment.
Beautiful. Well, congratulations on the switch.
Yeah.
And I think your business answers probably the number one question that I get when I'm interacting with independent schools, which is enrollment. How do we get increased enrollment? What do we need to do? Why do you think this question is so much more challenging to answer today than it was even a couple of years ago?
So I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I think it was just today, our local newspaper had a thing about local colleges and universities struggling now with the demographic dip that we felt 5-10 years ago. And I was like, there was certain comfort in knowing that, I don't want them to suffer, but there's certain comfort in knowing that they're dealing with it now. Because usually things go top down from universities opposed to bottom up. Right. And they're struggling with it, and I'm seeing what they're doing. And again, we've been dealing with it for longer. And I think so the demographic dip was the initial part of it, but I think it's only going to get worse or more difficult because of, COVID. Everything post-COVID has been a little insane, settled, but a little insane. I think things like tuition increases outpacing inflation. So the costs are getting unbelievable. And then I think, generally not to knock colleagues at schools, but a general lack of sophistication around things that need to be done. And then the final one that's really frustrating to me is a general sense that for the most part, marketing offices or Marcom offices and admission offices aren't working together. Whether there's like a silo or a fiefdom or whatever. And I'm like, that time has to stop because it's all related and it's like vested self-interest. We need to work together to make this work. So I think that's a lot. There's a lot there, but that's where I would start.
So interesting. So I guess what I'm hearing, it's weird to think in terms of like supply and demand because it's kids, but there's less of a supply in some regions. Maybe there's more of a supply in other places, but in general, there's just a higher level of competition. And if schools aren't being intentional about their marketing, they're going to fall behind.
I couldn't have said it better, but I also think Cindy goes further upstream, more intentional about their product. There was a line, and I'm going to paraphrase it, and I don't know who said it, so I apologize, but good marketing only makes a bad product fail faster. Yeah. So I think that schools need to really think about what they're doing in the classroom, how they're delivering and doing what they want to do, and then also differentiating themselves. Right. I mean, here's the marketing piece. How are you different than your biggest competitor? How are you different than that public school or charter school that's free? And if you can't answer that question very well, I think that's the place to start. That's definitely the place to start.
Might be worthwhile if you're listening, pause this episode and answer that question first. What is your differentiator? Why am I going to pay for your service versus getting it for free elsewhere? You're right. If I can't answer that, there's no going past that.
Yeah. That's and I actually have an exercise you can do. You can pause. Well, I assume you're not listening to this at work in the summer, but here's the thing I tell clients or even prospective, people that I talk to is go in an admin meeting, take out a note card, pass it around, and tell everybody that you're going to read these aloud. So keep it anonymous, but ask them like if you like tonight. So you're doing this exercise during the day. Tonight, you run into a prospective family and they ask you, why should that family choose your school over your biggest competitor? And then name your biggest competitor so everybody's thinking about the same school. Have them write down the one reason, collect those cards, and then read them aloud. And my assumption is that if you have 8 people in that room, you're going to have 8 different answers.
Well, and is any of that evidence on your website?
Oh, that's even better. Yeah, that's even better. So like you have to know, and I think everybody needs to be reading from the same script. Here's the reason why you should select us. And in particular, here's the reason why you should select us over the competitor. And if the answer is small class sizes, caring teachers, like you have to, that's throw up.
It's not good enough.
I mean, no, it's not. You have to, you really, and I think schools are hesitant, even resistant to do this. You have to put a stake in the ground.
Yeah.
You have to differentiate and decide what you stand for, how you do it, and who you do it for.
Might you give an example of a compelling statement like that? Because that's the first thing that came to my mind was small class sizes, caring teachers. But what is a compelling differentiator?
Well, I really think that's a good question. Try to think of a good example. Let me talk around, and hopefully I'll get there. And if I'm not, Cindy, hold me to it. If you are a school that serves a certain population, learning difference, certain age or whatever, I think you have a little easier because you already, baked into your mission is what you do. I think, and we struggled with this at my last school, which was a pre-K through 12, very strong at the time, day school that did a lot of things well. And, we had the small class sizes and the caring faculty and all of that. But what do you stand for? Is it a certain teaching method? Is it a certain way? Back in the first category is like if you're single gender, you believe in that. So, we were co-ed. So is there a certain thing? Is it all about leadership? So I guess, Cindy, I don't have a great answer, but I think
it's so personalized.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's how do you do what you do? And I think, we struggled again. When I say these things, I want people to understand I don't have all the answers. Like we struggled with this, but this is a good place to start and think about. And
there are questions worth asking as a team.
The process is so important,
right?
To have those conversations and decide, basically, really who you are and who you serve.
Yeah,
and you have to know those things.
It's so interesting you say that because I'm coming from international schools, specifically from IB schools. There's such a strong culture. There's a shared language around that. So when you go to an IB school's website, you hear that same language out. And when I've been exploring US schools, there's almost like an identity crisis. Some schools are crushing it, like Mount Vernon, Woodward. We can see really cool examples of schools that have their voice. But in some ways, a lot of the websites feel like a little bit of an identity crisis. Who are we? What are we doing? What sets us apart? So if our audience takes away one thing from this episode, that would be a very valuable takeaway.
Well, if I can even pull that thread a little bit more, Cindy, like not only who we are, like answering those questions, but then also communicating that. Like the websites, they're obviously related, but they're almost separate. Like, and I think a lot of schools do it poorly. They do both poorly. So I think it's about figuring out that first piece and then communicating it. And,
shouting from the mountaintops.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you want to go down the rabbit hole of this, but like for a school website, I think that, if I see one more website that looks the same as everybody else and has these big photos with no differentiator right away, I'm going to throw up. Like,
tell us what you really think.
Yeah, well, I can say that now because I'm not at a school. Like the website, so above the fold, right before you scroll, it's an old newspaper term, right? When newspapers were folded above the fold. So I think that whatever you stand for, like go back to that exercise, people, what's the difference?
Right.
Whatever that is, you guys decide on one thing. That has to be on the homepage of the website at the top.
Because guess what? Nobody's giving you 3 scrolls to get to your mission. They're just moving on to the next school.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. And it's true. It's true.
I love it. So I really was so excited to have you on because you're an expert at inbound marketing. And I'm a HubSpot gal. I love the inbound marketing book.
Yeah.
So might you kind of give us a primer of what is the difference between inbound marketing and maybe a more traditional style of marketing?
Sure. I think about it this way. So traditional outbound interruption marketing, that's the old way. And what that was so like think of it this way. So like a television ad interrupts, that's where the interruption comes, interrupts your viewing pleasure. A radio ad interrupts your listening pleasure. A print ad interrupts your reading a newspaper, the print. Kind of all the same thing, you get the drift. The problem with that kind of marketing now is that one, there's technology that takes that away.
Right.
XM radio, DVR, or we don't even call it DVR anymore, but whatever. So that's gone.
Yeah.
Two, they're becoming extremely expensive. Three, it's impossible to measure. And it just, people don't pay attention anymore.
Nope. You zone out.
They zone out. So the idea was, rather than trying to interrupt folks to get attention, like, hey, look at me, it's we're going to put a magnet and attract those people, draw those people to that. And then to kind of close that loop, how does that happen? It happens at Google. It happens at a search engine primarily. So somebody goes to Google and types in something, private school in Pittsburgh, and you want your school to show up.
Right.
Multilingual
school, any of their kind of
school.
Yeah.
Or even further up the content stream. Again, this is a certain school. My child is struggling to read. What content can you as a school, if you serve students with dyslexia or other learning differences, show up in that search result? And then you become the expert they know, like, and trust. And then they, depending on where you are in the world, if they're close, then they can call you and engage with you and maybe send their child to your school.
I just love it because, especially as an educator, it feels so natural. Like that information isn't something we need to keep for ourselves and safeguard. That part of our job is to educate and to educate our community. So it feels like such a natural fit to say, hey, this is what we do here. This is why we do it. Do you want to learn more about dyslexia? This is what it is. Here are some practices that help. We're already doing so many great things in our schools. How can we use that to leverage our position in the market?
I agree. And it's always felt natural. I guess that's why I hadn't thought of it that way, but I guess that's why it has felt natural that most people that are attracted to schools are educators in their heart at some point, or at some level. And I think that that's good. Although it's funny, when I started with Inbound and would blog about this, schools were hesitant to kind of share stuff,
right?
Like there was some sort of secret sauce, or like Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. It's like, no. It's like, get it out there, shout it from the rooftops that you're an expert. Royal U, the school, you're an expert and you do pretty good things. So here's what we do.
I love it. Yeah. And that's how I learned about it through my work with Toddle. And that was really cool for me, just to learn about giving things away for free and becoming the expert in the space, and just, really leaning into that and owning that. It's really joy bringing. And I think it puts goodness out in the world, and you become somebody people trust by doing the things you love, which is just great.
I do believe in karma, like just do good things, share good things, and then good things will come back to you. And I think that's important in this kind of marketing.
Well, and I think there is a hesitancy of there are the DIYers who, if they read your article on dyslexia, are going to want to homeschool their kid and use your resources to do it. And all the power to them. You want to help them as part of your community. Yeah. But I would say the vast majority of people are going to read that article and go, oof, these people know better than I do. This is where my kid needs to go.
I love that, because I say it this way. If 10% of the people just take the article and implement, It's fantastic because you
Great.
can't get everybody anyways. You can't serve everybody anyways. But if those 90 or 8, depending on what it is, they're not going to be able to execute like you as a school can execute. And then they're going to look for a place, and of course they're going to come to you.
Totally. I love
Yeah.
it. So I hope that paints a clear picture for our audience because it can feel like a new concept. It's one of those odd ones that feels so natural and obvious, but also kind of maybe different from how we've done things in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
I guess the next question that I think would pop up is how do I break through the noise? Like if I go on Google and I search dyslexia, how the heck am I supposed to get my school to rank even in the top page on
Yeah.
Google?
Well,
Any advice there?
yeah, I think, what was the one line? I'll try to be funny here. The first point in acknowledging, or the first point in solving a problem is acknowledging that there is a problem. And
Yep.
I think that, this is, I'll get on my soapbox, that schools need to pay attention to SEO. They are so, I don't even know the word or the verb or the adjective. Like they just don't pay attention. And what frustrates me, and I do this in a presentation that I have, is schools, we talk about social media all the time, like ad nauseum. And social media is important, and we can talk about it. And I think schools need to engage and do work there. But they talk about social media. And in terms of recruitment, this was data from my former school, 2019, 2020. 2% of traffic to our website was from social media. So if you think of recruitment, whereas organic search, which is affected by search engine optimization, was 46%. So
Wow.
you think of that, like schools, there's 46% and schools aren't doing really anything.
Right.
So the thing to engage with is to have a plan for social media. Now, I think that in the past, people used to think it was like black magic voodoo. You couldn't do it, but like with content management systems these days, all the technical stuff is removed. It's much more easy to do these kinds of things. You either have to do it in house or sub it out, but
Right.
make it part of your budget. Make it part of your budget to show up, because we don't have to go there, but like the whole rise of AI and,
There's going to be a lot of content coming
oh
out.
my gosh. And then generative search results, things from Google, it's going to change. And people are like, oh, SEO is dead. It's not dead.
It's not dead.
It's going to morph. It might be 1 year. It could be 4 years. I don't know. But pay attention, have
Right.
schools make it part of their budget.
To elaborate on the exercise, we're going to do lots of it. You could just pause this episode multiple times and do exercises. But
Yeah.
so step one is what is your differentiator? And
Yeah.
then as a team from there, say, if somebody was trying to find us online, what would be the top 10 search words we think they would use? And then if we look at our website, how many times are those 10 words embedded into the text on our website? Would that be a nice first step if I'm thinking SEO, or is that a little too simple?
No, I love it. And I would add just a couple things to clarify. The first piece is think about who you're trying to attract.
Yes.
Right. So obviously personas, I know you know what those are, Cindy, if you're a HubSpot fan, but like you have to think about who you're trying to attract and get super granular. Um, for us, a lot of times it was mom,
Yes.
just because mom was making decisions. So what would mom do? And then think there's exercises that you could do, but it's also really important the language that she uses. So the example I like to cite is that one of our personas at my former school, her and her partner, husband, whatever, were first generation independent school families. So they didn't, and people are like, what does that matter? They didn't know independent school.
Right.
So she would probably type in private school,
Mm-hmm.
and those are different searches.
Well, and
So
words like legacy and are not going to appeal to her as much potentially because
yeah,
it feels exclusionary.
and intimidating and all the things. Yeah, totally. So I think it's like, who are you trying to attract, and think of
Yes,
that person. In our case, it's a woman, mom, and I can still, her name was Anne for us.
love
And
it.
what would Anne type into Google, and pick five keywords. And just to clarify, we're not talking necessarily about school or
Hmm.
private school. Make it longer. Keywords are usually longer. Um, the term is long tail, a longer keyword, right? But like, so for example, Pittsburgh private school. So when I started this whole journey, this was years ago now, we typed in Pittsburgh private school, and then just look where you end up. So now you
Yeah.
would go into Chrome, go to an incognito window. So if you don't know what that is, you can Google it, but you have to make sure that Google doesn't know who you are because that will affect the results. But go to an incognito window and then type in your what you think is your most important keyword and then count. See where you end up. And for us, we weren't on the first page. We didn't show up on the second page. We didn't show up on the third page. And then I just started crying. I didn't even look because like this was a super important keyword and
And you're nowhere.
we're nowhere. And that's where SEO starts. So from a kind of a 30,000 foot level, SEO is going from holy cow, page 4 to hopefully page 1 for that term.
Love
And
it.
that's what SEO is. And then to your point, there's really 3 things I tell schools. One, the title tags. So
Yes.
up in the browser window, that let's talk about Chrome. That text in that tab is a title tag. And the content management systems that most schools use now, the website providers, you can easily change those. Most schools don't do it. So so it's really at its basic 1 keyword per page.
Mm.
So put the keyword in the title tag. Try to have the keyword be in the meta description. Although that's not a ranking factor, it can be important for searches. Have the keyword on the page, and ideally have the keyword as an H1 tag on the page.
Yes.
We're getting super granular now, but
Yeah.
like,
Well, and for anybody who's like, this is speaking another language, it's like, just look at your website and does what you're saying, is it visible there? That's at least a step one. And
yeah,
then read simple things. H1 is just a heading.
yeah,
It's just changing the category of
right.
the heading. It's just making sure that you've got those tags in there. So I think it can feel like, but really at the end of the day, it's just looking at your website and making sure the words that you care about are placed in the text.
Totally. And I super valid concern that you just raised. But here's what I would say is just what we talked about, 10 minutes ago or so. Like the enrolling students is only going to get harder. So
Yep.
if
You
you're
got to get more
listening,
sophisticated.
yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're in charge of this work, you've got to make it your professional development this summer.
Do it.
Because
Yeah.
I'm looking at my calendar. Sorry. If you are not in charge, or like if you're not tasked with doing this, but you're in charge of um, overseeing people that do this work, do a little light reading this summer, figure it out just so that you understand the terms. And I talk about this with most technology. It's like learning a foreign language, and you have to
Right.
learn the vocabulary first, and then you can build on top of that. But you kind of have, well, not even kind of, you have to know this stuff now.
Right.
You have to.
Or hire a consultant. That
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
like, you don't have the time to learn another language right now, hire somebody who does, because you need to be fluent. Otherwise you're going to get left behind.
Couldn't agree more. Now that I'm a consultant too, I feel a little,
You need a little bit stronger of a push.
no. I feel a little like weird, like, oh, hire a consultant. But like you have to do one of those 2 things.
Right.
You either have to do it yourself, do it in house, or outsource it. But make it a priority. Make it something.
If I'm thinking of this, if I'm thinking about my personas and I'm like, ooh, I really want to do this with my team, 1 persona, 5 personas, is there a sweet spot when it comes to developing your school's website?
Yeah, that's a good question. One question I get a lot. I would start with 1, and I would think of who is your most, or where is like your biggest problem area. Like I need
Mm,
pre-KK students, or your place that you need the most students, or the biggest revenue generator for you.
smart.
And then so pick that persona and then work the steps all the way down. So inbound is persona, keywords, SEO, content, and social. So
Smart.
kind of think all the way down, get that fully baked, and then think of other ones. There's some natural uh, breaks or spots. So if you're a boarding school, it's probably day students, boarding students, or so domestic boarders, international boarders. If you are a day school, think of your entry points.
Mm,
Or if you're a school, and most schools are like this now, so I don't want people to feel ashamed about this. You're enrolling anywhere, any grade, think about where you might have holes or places you want to fill first, and then work from there. And then maybe leave your stronger um, programs or grades for later.
smart. Do you find that is our website is the best place to connect with prospective families, or are there other spaces or places we should be thinking about connecting with them?
I do think the website's the best. Well, I would say it this way: your web assets. So like your web. So if you have a blog, if you have a website, and the reason I say that is that, um, well, there's two things. One, it's the easiest place to convert a prospective family from an anonymous to a known.
Right.
Really hard on social, really hard on social. So we can talk about social if you want, but like you've got to drive folks back to your website where you can convert them. And
Right.
then the second thing that's baked into what I'm saying is that I really am a proponent of schools offering multiple conversion points on their website.
Mm.
So just having an inquiry form anymore doesn't cut it. And I think that the inquiry form is way down in the funnel.
Yes.
People are doing their research, they're checking out, and then finally with the inquiry form, they raise their hand and they say,
Hi.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
hi, you're now worthy. You may market to us," because they've decided already. And the other thing that I think schools need to pay attention to, if we're talking digital, are review sites.
Go on
It
good schools. Go on those places where they're
it's
already
niche.
gathering.
Yeah, it's niche. Great schools, boarding school review, private school, all those things. Google, some schools do have it, some schools don't. It's a disaster right now, but I think you've got to pay attention because they're so important. And
Mm.
I know that schools, and I hear this, they're like, you know what, rating sites are the devil, and
But they're
and I
out
go,
there and they matter.
I I say, look, I don't disagree with you. It's hard to rank a private school for a 7-year-old. The
Right.
problem is it doesn't matter what we think. The parents are looking and they care and they're talking about it. So you've
It's
got
a
to pay
watering
attention.
hole. They're already gathering there to drink the Kool-Aid, so you might
That's
as well
right.
give them a punch bowl.
That's great. I like that. I'm gonna say that. I'll steal that, Cindy. That's exactly right.
So I think two things I would kind of summarize from that. One would be incentivize leaving reviews. If you've got parents who love your school and think you're doing a great job, ask them, say, hey, it really helps us. Can you write a review for our sports program? Can you write a review for our kindergarten
Yeah.
program? One. The
Yeah.
other one I'm hearing there is a clear call to action on the website of have your call to action everywhere. Speak with us for a quick 30-minute consult. Come in, see the school, come book a tour. It shouldn't just be some buried form deep within, but lots of opportunities for them to meet you, see you, collect their data.
Oh, yes. Like we're starting to put little web chat up for clients, which is basically a glorified contact form that's in your face.
Smart.
Take your scheduling calendar tool, embed the calendar. Don't hide stuff. Let them, like to your point, let them just schedule. People are busy. Again, if we think of moms, she's busy. There's
Right.
a lot going on. So make it easy for her. I think that's another thing too, which is a whole nother podcast, is the customer experience at schools, the prospective
Right.
family experience at schools. I think we make it too hard,
Right.
based on legacy, based on not paying attention. Nothing nefarious, but I think we need to start to be cognizant of the fact that we make these families jump through incredible hoops. To what end?
Right.
If you're a school with too many apps per seat, then you might have to do that. But if you're trying to enroll people that are going to be qualified and you need students, let's start to make that easier.
Well, how many clicks and how many scrolls does it take to capture information? That's more than a couple, you've lost it.
Yeah.
So, like it just sparks so many ideas of like, do a coffee morning, do a anything that you can to get people in the door, either virtually or in person. That's what you really want when you're thinking of enrollment.
Absolutely. Yep. Totally.
That's very cool. All right, well, let's go to the mistakes that you see because I'm guessing when people call you in, you're kind of the big guns. So, what what are some of the marketing mistakes that you see that you're just like, oh, okay, let's.
Yeah. The two big ones come to mind, and I alluded to them, I think, initially.
Right.
One is marketing and admissions not working together.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes it's not even. I don't mean to suggest that like they don't get along. It's not even anything bad, but I think that the Marcom office and the admission office, and I realize in some schools that's just two people, but in
Right.
some schools it's more. They have to be meeting regularly and going over it. And I think they both. I would argue. Let's just say they're two different people or
Mm.
two different offices. Both have to have agency, kind of into each other's kind of business, and they have to take ownership of both things,
Right.
right? So that if you think about it, in a very crass way, which is what it is, marketing is driving hopefully leads, inquiries, and admissions is sales.
Mm-hmm.
And they both have to own those numbers. And I think that's important. I think the second big piece is just a lack of budget. I joke in my talks that, and I'm using really this all the time, is that I think marketing at schools, the marketing plan, and what I do is I put up the definition of insanity. Doing the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, this is the year that print ad's going to drive enrollment. No, it's not.
Right.
Now I'm not totally poo-pooing print. I'm not a huge fan, but it can work. But are you measuring? Are you trying new things? Are you experimenting?
Right.
Um, I'll go on a tangent. I'll come back. This is one of the things that drives me crazy about schools is that we talk about our students and we want our children in the community to fail, have a safe place to fail, experiment, learn, and move forward. But we don't do that for the adults,
We're just
right?
failing again and again.
Yeah, marketing, I fail all the time, and it's
Right.
really not failing. It's basically running a test. It's
It's
experimenting,
tweaking. Yeah.
but it's failure. I run a test. Do I get attention or not? I iterate and I try again. And marketing, I don't see schools doing that.
Right.
But back to the other piece, it's just schools are not. So there's that insanity piece, but it's like they have to spend money, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not even hiring a consultant because that can be very successful. It cannot work. But like you've got to either invest in your people or you have to invest in spending money to do Google ads or Facebook ads or if you're using print, do the print or do the direct mail, whatever it is. It's not free.
Right.
And to say that, oh, social media is free, wake up.
Well,
Because
and
it's
time
not.
is money. Because have you ever edited a 1 minute video? It takes an
I know.
hour, two
I know.
hours of your very valuable time.
Oh, Cindy, that's so true. It's like the one I hear that drives me crazy is I just get a recent college grad to do it. They know what to do. I'm like, oh, shoot me.
Yeah.
If it's not that, but that's so true. Time is money, and it takes. The one thing I always say too is schools are very, it's very prevalent to add things to people's plates without removing them.
Yep.
Right, and then you're like, why don't you get that done, Brendan? Well, you had me taking photos and writing for you and doing this, and how was I supposed to do that?
Oh, and teaching grade 5.
Teach grade 5. Oh, I have to do bus duty, cafeteria duty, and I'm coaching lacrosse this afternoon.
Right. So just kind of carve out the resources that if we want a return on investment, we have to make an investment.
It is, and I would be really direct and say schools need to spend more money, period. However that money manifests itself in the school is fine, but you need to spend more money on marketing and trying to do it, on the cheap. Like,
Shows.
Yeah, it does.
And is it a percentage of tuition, you'd say? Is it an overall number? Like, how might I think about my budget? How do I know if I'm like on the mark or if I'm under or overspending?
I've thought about that a lot, Cindy, and I don't have a great answer. But typically, what I'll tell schools is, whatever you're spending, double it.
Wow. Okay.
Double it. It's well. Let me ask, and I would say this: did you meet your budget? Well, here's another thing too. I don't like this number. We're fully enrolled. What does that mean? Did you meet your budget number or not?
Right.
And if you're meeting your budget number, things are good. Okay, then there might not be room to change. Although I would say that's the time when you really want to double down and invest so that if you do have a dip or a softening, you're good. But if you're not meeting your budget, and it's counterintuitive, people are like, oh, we're not meeting budget number, the revenue's down.
So we shrink back.
Yeah, let's shrink back and let's cut marketing. You should be, whatever you're spending, double it. And this is where schools are tough. You should cut something else.
That's it.
And they don't want to do that, which I get it. It's hard. Leadership is hard. But anyways, take that marketing number and double it.
Okay, hear that, everybody? Take your marketing number and double it.
People are going to come at me with pitchforks, but if we want to make change, we have to take some big steps, big action.
Love it. I'm not sure if this connects with you, so feel free to say skip on this question. But one thing I've always heard with branding and marketing is the importance of storytelling. So do you think it's important that leaders are able to tell the story of their school, or that marketing tells a story, or what is the role of storytelling in all of this?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm just processing. There's so many ways to think about it. I'll just spitball off the top of my head. I've heard a couple heads of school say that they're like the chief storyteller,
Cute.
right? That they're just spreading the good word. I think it's really important, but I would, maybe just because we talked about it, I would go back to what differentiates us.
Mm-hmm.
You
Is more
know,
important.
yeah, as you're telling that story and weave that into things, and I think that um, particularly for school people working in the school, I think it's important because a lot of times I think about are we recruiting or are we retaining?
Mm,
They cross pollinate for sure, but like how what are we doing? And I think a lot of the storytelling that comes out of schools is about retention,
right.
and the people that are researching the schools do want to see that. Um, but I've seen a lot of schools recently really cut back on their news stories on their website.
Hmm.
They think that, well, I'm making an assumption, which isn't always good. But I think that they think that just posting on social is okay.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the technique I would like to see is have that news feed, which for me is completely internal. It's storytelling, it's sharing the good word, it's reinforcing why a family's, even if they're paying full, they're still making a sacrifice, right? So it's
Right.
reinforcing why they're doing that. And then, well, because the converse of that is a blog, which is completely external facing, which some schools don't fully grasp. But if blog is external, news story is internal, but then share that news story to social,
Right.
which you can then drive back to your website. So there's
Yes.
there's that there's that you're sharing the good news, but you're driving back to the website, which either gets current families
Mm.
engaged more, gets prospective families engaged to potentially convert from an anonymous visitor to a prospective, and then could also potentially help with SEO.
I
So,
love that because what I'm hearing is that in terms of content, we all stress about our social media content. And what you're saying is, don't worry so much about that. Let's create our blog, our outward facing inbound marketing content. Let's create our school news and that kind of content. Let's turn that into our social media posts because that's only going to bring in 2% anyway. Let's focus on that 46% Apple.
absolutely, that's part of it. I think the other part of it is we talk about social. One of the things for me is to again think about social. Uh, One of the things I see schools do, let me talk about the negative and then I'll go into where I think they should go,
Cool.
is they use social media like a scrapbook.
Okay.
No real strategy. We're just
Here's
posting.
Sally
Yeah.
doing whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Which is wonderful. And, I'm a dad. I love seeing my kids or a friend, their friend, it's great. But again, as we're talking about struggling enrollments, think of social media this way. Are we posting this to recruit kids or are we posting this to retain kids? So if we're
Right.
posting to recruit, we're going to drive them back to the website to convert them. If we're posting to retain, we want them to stay on that channel and ideally engage, like,
Share.
comment, share, right? Because even that 46-2, the stat I quoted earlier, you just mentioned, um, the social media platforms are pay to play now. So
Right.
most of your fans aren't even seeing that content anyways,
Mm.
right? So that we're spending that. So I would argue that a school should, you don't need 15 social media channels. Pick one, kick its butt,
Smart.
and then expand, and own it.
Well, and I guess that comes back to the question of even if I've just doubled my marketing budget, do you think I should be dumping it into social media at this point? Or would you say start with the website, start with the website?
Well, here's what we do. We think, I see a lot of schools get so nervous about their website and they say, oh, we hate our website and our website stinks. And my first reaction is, well, there's two. One is, it's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the wood and nobody, sees it or hears it, did it really happen?
Right.
It's like, if nobody can find your website, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
matter,
matter.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Secondly, and I know from going through multiple website redesigns, once we would, you're with it forever. And once you launch it, you're like, oh my God, this is awful. I want to throw up.
Yep.
But I've gone to people's websites, prospective clients or clients, and they say, "Oh my gosh!" And then I look at the website and I'm like, "Oh, it's pretty nice." Like there's so much other low hanging fruit
Mm-hmm.
that I would do, like to go directly to the answer to your question. If you double your marketing budget, my first thing is um, there's two things: drive traffic and drive conversions. So for me, it's Google Ads and SEO. They're different sides of the same coin
Okay.
because you're going after keywords. So and Google, people go to Google with intent,
Yes.
whereas you're on Facebook to maybe, yeah, totally. Like I'm scrolling, you're fighting your crazy uncle, you're fighting your, looking at high school friends or whatever. So it's Google,
Mm-hmm.
and Google will take all the money you give it. And this is where, if you don't have internal expertise, I would outsource, because it'll take money and you might not have results. I mean,
It's a
so
beast. Yeah. So
it is a beast.
I
And
would say hiring for SEO is the like having worked at an ed tech company that specializes in inbound marketing, hire a good SEO person
yeah,
because they're hard to find, but like it's worth it.
yeah, well, of course, preaching the choir here. I think so. But I also think that the other thing, when I say Google ads, and this is another part of the investment, is I've seen schools run paid traffic. So they're paying for a Google ad that runs traffic to their homepage.
Not collecting any data.
And I'm like, what are we doing here? You have to run it to a landing page. And then I believe you then have to have like lead nurturing emails and a systematic follow up to get these people to consider your school. So it's like, it's not just turning on or throwing money at Google. So it's Google and it's SEO, and then it's the conversion piece. So there's different tools and things you could do to focus on the conversions on your website, and
Right.
then maybe pay a copywriter, or do it in house, because
Pay your
usually,
teachers. Give your teachers
yeah,
$50 to write a blog.
buy them beer, give them chocolate, bribe them. We used to do that, but like, it's the blogging, or even look at the website with fresh eyes and go back to that first question: what differentiates us from our biggest competitor? And then make sure the website tells that story. Make sure the website makes that point. And you don't
Yes.
have to be cute about it. Be direct.
Yeah.
Be
That's
direct.
people. Nobody's ever gonna like overstate your call to action there. I think like people say, but I don't want it to feel. You don't. Nobody thinks that. Just put your call to action loud and clear and prominent.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You don't want to offend or whatever. We need to all be a little more aggressive.
Is there a CTA that works better for schools? Is it like book a chance to come tour the school? Is it sign up to receive our whatever newsletter? Like, is there a call to action that you've seen work better?
No, and I'm going to give you a really crappy answer. All of the above. Like, I think you've got to have all of them, Cindy. So like, you definitely have to have request information. You have to have apply. You have to have schedule a call with the admission director, schedule a Zoom call, sign up for a tour,
Yeah,
because you're not
all of it.
sure where that person's going to be in the journey, or
Right.
where they are with time. Because that call to action in September, when you have that full time, versus, let's say that they're at a public school and they get their final report card mid-June, like right now, and they're like, this isn't working.
Right.
Right. And they want it for September. So that call to action could be different. So,
Smart.
yeah, I think it's all of those.
I love it. Do you think you mentioned kind of a CRM, customer relations management tool,
Yeah.
CRM?
Yeah.
Which, for anybody who doesn't know, that's tools like HubSpot or
Yeah.
MailChimp. It's something that collects your users' data and then it puts them on a journey of sales. It says,
Yeah.
okay, you said you're interested. Here's an email of what you're interested. And it keeps you warm and fresh and top of mind.
Yeah.
Do schools need to have a CRM? Is there one that works best?
And I know you don't know this, so I'll say this. I just launched my own CRM for schools. So
Cool.
that's why it's like a setup, this feels kind of squirmy, but it's called School Marketing CRM. And the design is that it's like HubSpot Lite.
Cute. Okay.
We
Because
used
HubSpot
HubSpot.
can be overwhelming.
It is. And I will never knock HubSpot, but I will say this. We started with it, oh my gosh, over a decade ago, and
Mm,
used it. It was successful. But it's grown, and that it's real expensive now, much more
yeah,
expensive. And to your point, Cindy, it's a beast.
it's a beast.
Right. And it probably does some percent of things that schools are never going to use.
Right.
So, and then the other problem and the tension is that the admission systems that are available for K-12 schools
don't integrate.
Well, they don't integrate. And then most of them don't do that kind of work. There are a couple, but most of them don't do that kind of work. So then, like that automations or keeping track of people or
set it and forget it, nurturing.
Yeah. And then don't include the ability to like create landing pages or have web chat or, we also do, because I think it's important, reputation management, like reach out to folks to ask for the reviews. So there's
Cool.
a lot there. Yeah.
All right. So if they're checking it out, what's that website again for yours?
Schoolmarketingcrm.com.
Very cool. Yeah. And I think it's always cool to know about good tools that are out there that are designed specifically for a niche, because you can go to HubSpot and you could try your hand, or you could try to make your own in-house thing, but to have a tool that's specially made for the things that you do is pretty helpful and pretty cool.
Yeah.
Love it. Is there such a thing as too many emails to send?
I'm processing. No, not schools. And this is where I would say, there's two kind of caveats. If you're delivering value and being helpful, there's not enough. The other thing is, back to your point about like with the CTAs being aggressive, most school people, including myself, I've had to learn how to do this. We're so kind of not aggressive.
Yeah.
That our
not a sales background.
Yeah. Our aggressive is not aggressive. So,
okay. So I would
say, yeah, I would say no. I would say that schools need to send more, particularly more just to be helpful, educate the prospective family. And again, this is like here's a technique, thinking about the personas that you develop, think about their pain points and think about their objections. So if you're emailing them about their pain points and solving those, and then thinking about the objections and answering those, there's not too much. There aren't too many.
And even just pure helpful, like 5 summer activities to do in our local area, school approved things, things like that people click on, save, share with their friends. Yeah, just know your audience and speak to their pain points. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any final tips that you have for us for increasing enrollment?
No, we've covered a lot.
I know. I feel like I kind of robbed you a little bit. I went in there and scavenged around.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. No, I just, I think the biggest thing is just start working together.
Yeah.
Schools are collaborative. I think schools are at their best when they're collaborative, and start to work together. I know this was a long time ago, but my last school, when I first started, we had a meeting that was weekly. And then eventually it was biweekly, but it was admissions, advancement. So like the fundraising arm and then Marcom. And I was in the admission camp at the time, our head of school.
Nice.
And we met every week. And, it was so helpful to be able to have conversations with colleagues and know, oh, what are you doing? Or what are you doing? Or how can we support? How can we lift each other up?
Right.
And then, just ideate. I think that was important. And as much as I say, like, at another meeting, oh my gosh, schools are notorious at that. Sometimes I think schools would meet to not do work. You think about work and you're not doing the work. But I think that having that communication, acknowledging the fact that you need help or we need to do something will go a long way.
I love it. I think this episode is such a gold mine. And I think we've left a lot of breadcrumbs, because hopefully there's a bunch of terms that you're like, you hear for the first time. It's like, oh, I've never thought about SEO. And then you come back and, oh, I hadn't thought about a CRM. So wherever you're at in your journey, I hope that we gave somebody, that next step to really level up, because enrollment is so important and it doesn't have to be a dirty word, and it can be fun and exciting. So I had such a fun time chatting with you today.
Yeah, Sydney, this was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And come back anytime.
Thank you.